Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Ethan Feldman from Toronto punk band Big Milk. So, before we get started, the most important question that I do have to ask you, Ethan, is are you in cahoots with the dairy farmers of Ontario?
Many people are convinced we are, but Big Milk is a stand-in, I guess, for big industry like big banks or big pharma. But yeah, the Dairy Farmers of Ontario, they're also a big entity. It's kind of like
Totally.
a little bit of Canadian content because we have like a lot of protectionism to, try to limit big old American organizations obliterating our industry, and then like Quebec separately has their own, protection to stop Canadian farmers from crushing them. It's like a weird circles within circles within circles. So
I love how
no, we're
knowledgeable. I
not.
can
We're
already
not in
tell that you're
cahoots.
you're into it. I love it. Are you? Do you drink milk? Let's also ask that. Are you a milk
Not
drinker
really. I
or
mean,
are
I
you an
I have my I have
anti-milk?
my coffee black. I'm not really into dairy that much. I mean, here and there, I guess butter's pretty cool, I suppose. I'm not a vegan. But no, I drink my coffee black. Don't really have much yogurt. I
Okay.
don't know.
I have to ask because it becomes a point of contention for a lot of people that they're like, you shouldn't be drinking cow's milk. You're an adult. That's for babies. And
I
people
heard
get very upset
Celine
about it.
I heard Celine Dion said that she hadn't had milk since she was 12 because it puts like phlegm on your throat and like it affects her singing. So
Yeah,
she's so serious about singing that
I
she
get
doesn't
that.
drink milk.
I think most people generally, I think a lot of us are at least a little lactose intolerant. So whether you feel it more from like a milk product or from a heavy cream, I like almost everyone I know has some sort of aversion to it for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, I mean we try to brainwash people on stage to yell "fuck Big Milk" at us. So I think that kind of covers our position on milk.
I love that. I want to talk a bit about your music. On that note, I was listening to a couple of your songs. Don't get mad, get even. What are you not trying to get mad about today, and what are you trying to get even with today?
Oh wow. Not trying to get mad about. I guess there's a lot to be or not be mad about. Um Today's been a decent day so far, I guess, about 5 minutes before this interview started, the basement neighbor started like blasting a movie, but like I was like, oh, that's fine. We'll work it out. I'm sure it won't come over the audio.
That's
But
acceptable.
it's just letting it go is the important thing. Um, I mean, we wrote that tune like just before pandemic lockdowns. I think like the night after, like there was a kerfuffle between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on like a debate stage, and like most of our songs are about like how we hate our jobs, and like that kind of was part of it. And it was just like a tune about transactions, I guess, but we didn't record it until like 2022 or something, maybe 2021. And by then, so much more had happened that kind of just kept like bleeding into it, I guess. We spent more time than usual in front of our screens. Things,
Totally.
you only know each other as like someone who gives you input and you output something to them. It was just a weird situation that really went into that song.
I love it. Your music is very cool. It's very like it's unnerving. Like the tonality of the instrumentation is a little unnerving. Um, but then at times it's just very melodic vocally, and it enters like this cool. I can't quite describe it. Like people will really have to listen to it to understand because like you're a punk band and you definitely hear that in the music, but it's so much more than that. It enters this alternative space that I can't quite place, and the energy is so intense at times, which I imagine you guys are incredible live. I haven't seen you live yet, but it really I bring that up because I don't often notice that a lot of bands today showcase that energy on their recordings as well
Mhm.
as Big Milk does. Like when you listen to Big Milk, you're like, man, that's probably a heck of a show. Like that's a big energy song. And it really makes you want to learn more about what you are trying to talk about, which seems to be a lot of different things.
Yeah, I appreciate I think you're picking up on it. I mean, we take Big Milk really as like a very therapeutic thing, and like on stage, it gets like louder and zanier. If anything, the recordings are like ultra articulate and trying to be like listenable at home, even though it's like, harsh noise, I suppose, here and there, still trying to mix it with like a catchy melody and like a tight performance, but for us it's like it's really therapeutic. Like I find it's like the weirdest thing. You can't go on the street and just like yell. Like if you're on the street just like yelling your lungs out, people be like, that's really weird. But if you're like
Yeah.
on stage in a venue and they give you a microphone with like 10,000 watts behind it, you can just like yell into it. And like you might even get drink tickets and like gas money for doing it, which is really nice.
That's a great point.
Um,
That's a great point. When you do it on the street, you are the crazy preacher that everyone's like, stay away from that guy. Like, I don't know what's up with them, but they are going off. But you do it on stage and suddenly it's like, wow, that was incredible. Like just it's such a different dynamic.
Yeah, it feels good. It's like nice to get the response and to like develop the energy with the crowd. We like spun up, we got some like indie radio play in across Canada during the pandemic because we put out our first EP in like March 2020 when like there weren't any shows. And one of the DJs was like, love this band. Sounds like the singer's gonna lose his shit by the end of every song. And I'm like, okay, that's actually a good path to start like taking. Like I think we gotta work out the like the dynamics and the levels so that we're kind of all on like a journey together.
Totally. I think
Try
you
not
do
to.
that pretty well. Like, do you guys record at home or did you take those like Big Milk and Milk 2? Did you take this to the studio or was that done at home?
Yeah, so we did that at a home. Our bass player's basement is kind of where we like compiled all of our gear. His wife also studied engineering at Metalworks for a little bit, and I
Okay.
suppose I'm a hobbyist, but we like put all our stuff together. So we like chained up two interfaces, and we put like 16 mics on stuff, and it's just like a tight little room where we can kind of just like play live, and we try to like run the song like 10 times or more, tighten it up, and then we'll pass them around and like start doing a survivor thing where we like vote versions off the island until we're down to the one take we all agree on. And then we start overdubbing and like, add harmonies and like extra guitars and whatever.
I think that's a
But
great
that's,
approach. It comes across really well on the recordings. I think you guys whatever you're doing is working, so keep doing that for sure.
thank you. Appreciate that a lot.
I want to talk a bit more about again because you guys are so politically driven and like these days especially. I mean, I feel like I say this a lot, but it's like there's so much going on in the world that it almost seems impossible to pinpoint any one thing, any one industry, any one topic to address as hey there's something going very wrong with the way this is systemically working right now. And I don't know, like, do you feel this way? Do you feel like it's hard to decide what to drive your attention towards? I
Mhm.
mean, I guess the benefit of being a musician is you can drive it towards multiple outlets, but as far as like that's a great release and that's a great for awareness and great for promoting that topic. But as far as driving sustainable change within our world, do you ever get overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what seems to be happening these days?
I definitely think that, yeah, it's really hard to kind of keep it going. It's easy to be kind of overwhelmed and paralyzed when there's so much going on, but like Big Milk's one of many things. Like, a diverse movement would have diverse tactics, and like Big Milk's music is like a little bit of maybe like energy driving that, but it shouldn't prevent people from, getting out there in the streets and like making organizations in their community and working that out. Um, since the band started, I started a new career, I guess. I went into law school, so I'm gonna try to get a good job at like the cop suing factory. And
There you
our
go.
drummer had an issue with bylaw a while ago where he was making, a good community event that was like common. Him and like three drummers would set up down at Dundas Square and they would just like play and people would dance and have fun. But bylaw was having like a lot of issue with it, and they hit him on some tickets and like trumped up charges. They were like carding and searching one of his friends without reason.
Brutal.
So, Big Milk's like a part of our lives, I guess, and like a part of what like where we are positioned, like how we're positioned. And yeah, it's easy to get overwhelmed, but it's a release in some sense, and like, art serves some role, but so does like community organizing and like finding people to connect with and like develop things that actually like will produce change.
Mhm.
Like is Big Milk going to make a systemic change. I don't know, but I think people like respond to it because they feel the same sort of things in their lives that we feel when we're like putting these emotions into the music, kind of like translating our feelings into a vibe so that whoever receives the vibe can like see that they feel the same emotions we have.
Totally, I get that completely, and I think that definitely comes across with your music, where it's like I get a very anti-capitalist feel from some of your songs for sure. I don't know if that's correct. That's just my interpretation.
Yeah, it's not wrong. And that's really, to speak to your other question, like maybe the source in a lot of ways of uh the kind of multiple conflicts that are going on, or maybe if not the source itself, that like there's a constant set of, intersecting like positions where it's like dominator and the dominated, and it tends to reveal itself often, at least in market context, through capitalism. But there's a variety of other ways in which that these like conflicts keep coming up. And the market appears to be something that a lot of our governments have like resigned themselves to kind of governing who wins and who loses. So yeah, it definitely impacts a lot of the ways that things intersect.
What do you mean by that?
So it is suggested in the manifesto of the Communist Party that capitalism erases all previous modes of domination. So if previously there was, patriarchy as in the way that it was described, like familial relations, like total domination of like a king and so on, was replaced with feudal relations, landed gentry and so on and so forth. At least in those relations, there were, sacred people such as like wizards or, priests or whatever, that blacksmiths had some sort of respect for who they were intrinsically, and then all that evaporates and turns into just like monetary relation, like the
Right.
dentist, the doctor, the lawyer, the priest, everybody who used to kind of have some sort of special position in society is just reduced to a monetary relation. It's the only
Right.
way of making judgment of who has value and who doesn't. And I guess since it's pretty common, like since the 80s, Thatcher, uh, Reagan, Mulroney in Canada, kind of just released a lot of the decision-making power of who has value to markets, and kind of the government's in a lot of Western societies kind of just been a like uh something that kind of greases the wheel for for corporations to kind of get what they need, like to produce more value and profit. So that's sort of what I mean by that. I mean, there's obviously a lot of dominations. Like you'll find there are hatred against trans people, there's racism, there's colonialism, there's sexism, but these things in one respect or another kind of get like washed over by money, some suggest.
Right.
I'm somewhat aware of who I am, but like you can go to Dubai, and if you have enough money you can get liquor. It's just
Yeah.
like a worldwide thing that like something overrides all of the dominations and kind of allows you to be a dominator or dominated based on your relationship to capital.
That makes total sense to me. I think you did a really good job explaining that.
It's tough. I
It is
didn't want to
tough.
lecture.
No, it is tough. No, but I think it's important because I like personally, I think that it's almost, I mean, we're already there. We're seeing those ceilings, and as a result of again monetizing all of these effectively essential services, whether you agree with them or not, from religion to healthcare to everything else in between. Um, we're in a big pickle, and the people that can't, who are struggling with making money to fulfill those, either get those services or to find success in those career choices, if that's what they're trying to do. I think then those are the same people you see uh, finding themselves attracted to these other terrible causes, whether it's a racist cause or a transphobic cause or anti-abortion. They're just picking something else in society to get mad about because they feel more control over that, because they have no control over the ceiling of capitalism, which is, we are, if we're not there already, we are quite close to it. I think everyone's an influencer. Everyone is you can't have a hobby anymore without trying to monetize that hobby. And that's problematic, I think, for a lot of reasons. Least of all, it gives people next to no time to just exist and create and be and think and enjoy the fact that they are a living, breathing human. It's constantly like, but what value do you provide
Hmm.
to someone else today? And I think that's a horrible precedent to set on anybody. And then I think as a result of that, you see the uptick in mental health issues and disorders that are also going untreated because it's such an everything is wound together so tightly. And nobody, or like a lot of the people in charge, are also wound in the same thing, where government is now very business. Everything is, with all the recent layoffs, for example, in journalism, is another great
Hmm.
example. It's like you used to be able to find um, proper news sources, reputable journalists, reputable papers, and that were funded by governments, but so that they could have an unbiased view on the, and that was at least the idea, whether you again agree with that how it was working or not. But now it's like we're losing all those funding from the governments for these people. They're being taken over by Bell and other companies whose goal is money and not giving the right information to the people of your community. And then as a result, there are these other people swooping in saying, well, I can make money talking about whatever nonsensical thing I want my paper to be about. And it doesn't provide any value to us as people. Anyways, that was a long tangent. I'm really sorry. I really derailed there. But
I think it makes a lot of sense. Like the thing you said about personal branding, I think is like really important that like we're so individualized, like as monads and like one individual. We think about our like personal rights and our responsibilities in a lot of ways, and that means that like our body is viewed as like our product in some sense, or our brand, our company, and kind of reducing yourself to like a sole proprietorship is a lot of the ways that like people interact with each other. And like it's hard in you know the art world, I suppose, because there's not much. I mean, we have a lot more government funding for like factor and grants and things like that in Canada than they do in the States, but there's still not much, and it's pretty like aggressively competitive. So either you're kind of writing at these grants and being like a big deal in CanCon, or you're playing like, you know, 15, $20 shows, pay what you can in someone's like basement or like tiny little clubs, just trying to, you know, have fun because you have a day job. And like the point of the band is just to like not lose money every month.
yeah, do you? I noticed that a lot, especially like in the Toronto music scene. There's a lot of sort of infighting with musicians more than there used to be, where it's like um, I find it's more challenging now than it was, call it 15 years ago, to get other artists on the same page as like, hey, we want to put together this show. If we all pull together $50, whatever, $100 a person, we can rent the venue ourselves and put on this show and hopefully get people out or not. Um, or it's a case, or if you're like, oh, I want to do a pay what you can show, people are like, oh, I'm not doing pay what you can. My time is valuable. My time, whatever. So you get a lot of people like arguing with the right way to be a musician and the right way to promote yourself as a musician. And you see it also with like, oh, I don't want to pay anyone to promote my work or pay anybody to help me write my bio, help me write a press release, because that's seen as like, I don't know, cheating or like gaming the system in some way, instead of being like, oh, this person has this skill set that is beneficial and in a way like bridges that community and helps build your own personal community. But instead, I just see it like again in Toronto, a lot of it, where people are very they're fighting. Everyone's fighting for that spot. Everyone's like it's less helpful, if you will. I don't know if you see that as well. I think it's different also in different music scenes, but
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of like different segments of it. You know, our bass player studied like bass jazz at York, so he may not be like deep in the punk scene, though he played like Warped Tour when he was a teen, and that was kind of like why we started Big Milk, for him to like relive his glory days, I guess.
that's cool.
And
I like
like I
that.
didn't study jazz, but I wish I did, and I was trying to pick up like a bunch of, you know, gigs playing like nice hotels with singers doing like, you know, like jazz versions of Amy Winehouse for 3 hours and like no one listens, you get paid really well. So I don't know if
Totally.
we're like too deep in the scene to notice the drama. What I definitely care about, at least myself personally, is like I love when people that you're working with are kind of like responsible and like reliable. Like for me, that's one of the most important things. Like, because there's so many great artists in the scene, but like a couple, if you're the kind of cat who like you watched a bunch of like documentaries on the Doors and Jimi Hendrix, and you think like you got to be like a burnout freakazoid and like not all there. It's like, okay, that's cool, but like everyone's really
Is it?
talented and the people who are like they can turn it on stage and then like have a like an honest conversation with you like off stage, like that's cool too. Like you don't have to be in character all the time. But I mean, I might just be like reading that person wrong. They might actually, or not that person, but like those people. I just, for me, it's important to be able to like turn it on and turn it off. Like it is to some extent like scripted, like what you're doing on stage, or at least it should be. Like it's not real to be like, yeah, we're just making it up every time. Like no one really does that. And if you are like that's miraculous, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's I love it, but no one's really making it up every time on stage. And like it's like professional wrestling. Like, on one hand, it's not real, but on the other, it's like you're performing, you're entertaining, you're being a professional doing the work together. So I'm always down to like play with new bands and new people. And like for us, it's really important that we're filling the room because like the Big Milk live show, like you got to hit critical mass for there to like be the mosh pit and have this like cyclical energy being delivered like from us to the audience and it coming back and like building on itself. So we try to play smaller venues with bands that are going to pull like us. We try really hard. Um, we've been doing things recently where we sell tickets on our own website at bigmilk.ca where we can charge no fees, no taxes. Like we eat the credit card fees and whatever, because like
Mhm.
I think it's like just from an economics perspective, if I'm going to see a show and it's like $20 in advance and like 17.50 with fees, rather 17.50 with fees in advance, $20 at the door. It's like, okay, you want me to pay
Yeah.
250 difference to like ensure I'm going to be somewhere? I might as well just hold on the money. So for us, we do like 15, 20, you save $5. I think it's like a bigger gap
Yeah.
of benefit to someone who's coming out to like make it worthwhile to buy in advance.
Yeah, I think
Just
that's
things
really
like that.
important. I like especially like because I find myself making those kind of considerations as well when I'm deciding what shows to go to. I'm like I'm also looking at those ticket prices, being like, okay, because it's tough. It's tough to get out to things if you're not right downtown and the show's downtown. It's a whole time commitment thing. There's a lot that goes into that decision. It's not as easy as like, oh, you're coming to the show and that's it. No, it's
Yeah,
like
like I'm
the
so
6 hours of
thankful
my day.
if someone wants to like put the time in and be there, like I'm so thankful. You should save 25%, like you
Yeah.
should get a real benefit for locking yourself in to like come out in advance. We appreciate that and like we'll eat the credit card fees to make it happen.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I hope that that's a trend that continues as well with a lot of bands. Speaking of shows, you have a show coming up in March 16th. Is it the 16th?
That's right. Saturday, March 16th. Handlebar. We're gonna be playing with Jerkoff Diary, who are just unbelievable.
Cool.
Death Word's Tie Dye is gonna be on the bill as well, and the Mahaleistic Entities, which are like one of the most exciting like psychedelic live acts out there right now. I think they're working on a recording. There's like nothing recorded out there, but they're just so fun. They're like just unbelievable players. Um, just kind of like they're really just even they're not making it up on the spot, but like
Yeah.
it's close to that. There's structured, but like they're really great. They have like Instagram influencer Jordan Dot Wave playing guitar. Our
Oh, cool.
drummer Griffin
Yeah.
plays drums, and usually like Sean Mahalia plays, yeah, he's the vocalist, I suppose, and often they have Napium on bass, though they have like different people who come in for like different things. It's a great thing. It'll be an unbelievable show. Saturday, March 16th at the
And you guys are
Handlebar.
recording that, right? You're doing a live recording of this one?
We have the ability to do so. The board at the Handlebar is one of the Behringer like X32s where you can plug in a USB thing. Every time I like promise that we're gonna get a live recording, something messes up on like the laptop or whatever. Our Monarch show, we got like 80% of the set because the board kept breaking down while the engineer was working on it. So I don't want to make promises, but I'm hoping that we can record it and get something out there because our live show is really interesting and exciting. It's not as like crystalline as the recordings, and I think it'd be like really good to capture it as it is now before we start releasing like additional new music and writing new stuff.
Yeah, no, it'd be really cool. I hope it does work out for you. I know all about those struggles with files, and I mean technology. It's not perfect, that's for sure. We have the means to do so many more things now than you used to, but nothing is guaranteed in the live world, which is why it's so important to go out to see the show in person and actually be there. Because I mean, then you're there. Then you're there. You can't. Your internal hard drive doesn't just like shut down. So
Hmm.
I do hope that works out, and I would love to hear that recording because I'm very curious as to how it translates. I would love to hear. I think a lot of bands don't do the whole live release as much as, and I could just be making this up. This is just like my perspective, but um, it's not as common for people to be like, oh, we released a live album as it was when I was growing up. Um, and I think that's part and parcel with everyone being able to do so much of their own recording, and everyone wants it to be the best representation of themselves, 100%, clean everything up as much as possible, do a little bit of editing, but there's so much character in live recordings that like a lot of live albums are my favorite albums from a lot of my favorite artists. Do you have a favorite live album?
Favorite live album? Um, that's a toughie. I guess when I was a kid, I got the double CD of the like Wild Blue Angel Jimi Hendrix at Isle of Wight Festival. I think it was like maybe a couple weeks before he died. He was like sober as a judge, which was pretty rare for him, and like almost doesn't explain his death because he was like so sober at the time. But they play like 2 hours, exceptionally tight, like top of his game, and like a lot of the Hendrix shows are short, like 20 minutes, like 30 minutes. He's tripping balls the whole time. But that's an unbelievable record. And um there's like a 20-minute version of Machine Gun, his like, anti-Vietnam War song. And to some extent, we've been sitting on and like nearly finished a recording of like an anti-war song we've been working on that like goes over well live. We think we might call Horsey or like Stupid Horsey or something, but uh that recording of Jimmy's has been like really important to us. And it's like a weird thing because that song Machine Gun was never released as far as I know, like any studio version, and just there's multiple like live versions of him just like killing it, jamming it with the band, kind of figuring out
That's
what it
cool.
will be.
I love that.
So
Yeah, there's not. I feel like there's not enough of that goes on too. Like, I think people like. I wish more bands would take more risks like that. Like, just don't be so hard pressed about like, again, having to get these perfect recordings out. Like, I have an engineering background, so like, I'm all about wanting to have a great record. Of course, I get it. Um, but it's really like all those little subtle nuances in live recordings and in the process of getting to those perfect recordings that sometimes could take years to get to that point, um, that end up being really special moments well later. And it's like you might not think that Big Milk live at Handlebar March 16th is going to be this epic live album 10 years down the road, but it also very well could be. So
mhm.
as much as possible, I hope that more artists take that into consideration. And yeah, if the venue has the capability, get those live tracks, even if you don't do anything with it for a while, get it, sit on it, and just even just for me, like as when I perform, I always love to take recordings of stuff just so I could watch it back later and be like, how did it actually look and sound to other people?
Mhm.
Because it's so different as a performer, as you know, how you feel on stage versus what somebody else is seeing. So it's like a weird like sports replay thing that you can
Yeah.
do now, that you can do at every show, that I think is really helpful in fine tuning things for next releases.
Yeah, I mean, we leave so much on the cutting room floor, and that's kind of just what you're saying. Like, you want it to be perfect because as like a small band, there's so little opportunities to like be in people's ears that I want whatever they get to be like the best ever. And I want people to come to the shows. And then it's like if I put out a live album, am I giving the if you give the milk for free, no one will buy a cow sort of thing.
Yeah, totally.
So we're definitely thinking about it, but we're hoping to kind of like close up this cycle of the Big Milk set and start like putting in, new stuff and working it out. And we really do like playing new stuff live to figure out like if it hits or not. Which I know is really big with bands historically, hasn't been so much these days, where you kind of road test stuff and figure out if people respond, see how it feels when you're like sweaty on stage and like if it's worth pursuing or not. So we're always experimenting, but not too much because it's all, tightly controlled for the entertainment purposes.
Absolutely. We are almost out of time. So before we wrap up, I do just want to make a mention of you guys distribute your stuff digitally, of course, and you're part of Artists for Change, which is a service basically that DistroKid offers that you can allocate a percentage of your sales towards. There's a bunch of them, a bunch of really great causes. I just wanted to mention that and ask you why that's important for Big Milk, and if
Hmm.
there's any cause in particular that you want to shed some light on before we wrap up today.
Yeah, so with the Big Milk EP and also an EP that me and the bass player of Big Milk put out previously with a band called Sister Strange. It's a like self-titled Sister Strange like recording. There's like a big floating purple witch for the cover art. So with both of those, we signed them up for the Artists for Change through DistroKid, where royalties that are received are forwarded to the NAACP in the United States. There's a variety of organizations, but I'm pretty confident from memory that's the one that we chose. For a variety of reasons, but just that kind of having uh, legal representation for your entitlements is one of the biggest problems with, I think, access to justice generally. And there's a lot of people who don't even know they're injured or that they have been wronged. And then you find out you're injured or wronged and you don't know what to do about it. And then you find out what to do about it. And it's just too hard to like go through the process. And we see that in a lot of systems, like the landlord tenant board's an excellent case in Ontario, where it's so weakened that even when tenants know what their entitlements and rights are, there's like really no capacity, right? Like 14 months to get a judgment, your lease is 12 months, you're going to have to deal with nightmares from your landlord for a while. It creates lawlessness. And in the same way, the NAACP in the United States defend a lot of like really significant cases for people who may know that they're being wronged, right? Because the legal system in many cases is the source of injustice. Um, Having the capacity to work within that system to kind of like find legal entitlements is like not only the first part, but also fighting for them. Because you can have those rights if no one's fighting for them, you're not going to get there. So both the first Big Milk EP and the Sister Strange recording, which I highly recommend. I think that's one of the best recordings I've ever worked on. I'm so proud to have been a part of that project. Both of those have their royalties forwarded to NAACP.
Very cool. That's really good to know about. I think that's really important. So I'm really glad that you guys decided to do that. Yeah, we're about to wrap up, so I just wanted to say thanks again so much for being here on the show with me. It's been fantastic to talk to you and get a little bit more insight about Big Milk and everything that you have going on. I want to wish you the best of luck with your career in law, because I know that is a tough thing to work through. Just the schooling is tough, and then it gets tougher. So all
Hey,
power
I
to
might quit my
you.
day job if Big Milk keeps going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we hope so. Honestly, I think that's always the goal for a lot of us. Or just do the music thing full time. But no, that's great. I really appreciated talking to you and getting some insights about everything that you guys are doing. And I'm sure we could have talked about a lot more today, but maybe we will talk again in the near future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting with you again soon.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Bye.
Cheers. Goodbye.